made it through the week, I wanted to kind of go back and talk about what happened in court on Tuesday, February 1st. I know the reason why I'm kind of doing this late is because I have been covering the big blizzard that came through Colorado late Tuesday night. I didn't really get home from the court hearings until midnight. And then the next day I was snow coverage, so that's kind of, and the following day. And so today's kind of been my first day off, and so I can talk about all my notes. I'm going to go through line by line what happened. Take it as you want, and please be respectful to each other in your comments. Let me know kind of where you're watching from. I have a couple mods that are going to help me out this time, but I wanted to go through what was said in court, what happened, answer questions at the end. So please hold off your questions until the very end, as I am going to try to go through all my notes. Again, I am going to talk about what happened in Chaffee County Court on February 1st with the Barry Morphew case. So we're getting a couple more people. I tried to post a little bit on Twitter saying that I was going to do this an hour ago, kind of giving people a heads up. I know a lot of people hate that I don't give them more of a heads up, so I try to give them a little bit more of a heads up. So again, just please be respectful, and also, you know, Barry Morphew, he is innocent until a jury does or does not find him guilty in court. So you know, he's innocent until proven by a jury. So please be respectful in your comments to one another, as well as to the defendant as well. Wow, people are watching from Texas, North Carolina, Colorado Springs, what? Yeah, Louisiana. Wow, all over. All right, I'm kind of waiting until a little bit longer to get some more people. I got my drink here. If I lose my voice, I'll take a sip of this. It is going to be a long one. I have 16 pages of notes, and typically on any given day during these last court proceedings, I usually take 9 pages of notes, but because this one lasted until 6:30 p.m., I wrote more notes. So let's get into it, I guess. All right. So just to note, Linda, the district attorney for Chaffee County, Linda Stanley, for the 11th Judicial District, was not there for the court proceedings on February 1st, as well as Barry Morphew's attorney, Drew Nielsen. She was not present as well. The defense does have a team of 7 women representing Barry, and they first talked about the motion for a change of venue. Right before we went into court, I had heard that it was going to be changed to Fremont County. I went in to talk to the court clerk to find out, you know, was this a motion that was filed already? Can I see the motion? And the court clerk kind of told me, you got to wait until the judge talks about it in court. So as soon as we got into court, when the judge sat down, he first addressed the change of venue, and he said he granted it and denied it in part. And what he meant by that was that, yes, it is being changed from Chaffee County, but it's being moved to Fremont County, which is just another county right across the border from Chaffee County. It's still in the same jurisdiction, but it is not in Chaffee County anymore. And the state, the prosecution, didn't make any further argument about that. Iris Eaton, Barry Morphew's attorney, said that she did want to make further, or she wanted to put it on the record that she wanted to do an investigation into the population of Fremont County, as well as the saturation of the press, because of District Attorney Linda Stanley's comments that in the previous hearing we had learned that the judge had said that the DA did violate the pretrial publicity motion, or the order that Judge Morphy had put into place in June. So the judge said, yep, I will give you guys time to investigate. So this means that as of right now, it looks like the trial will be held in Fremont County, but the defense could file another motion for a change of venue and giving evidence to saying that Fremont County isn't big enough and there is still a media saturation is high there, and so they want to change to a different location for the trial. So it might be held in Fremont County and it might not. So I guess for right now, it is going to be, the trial is scheduled to be in Fremont County in May. So after that, then the judge talked about how, you know, they have to change Barry Morphew's bond modification. They have to change it so that he can travel to Fremont County. So now Barry Morphew can travel to Fremont County for court proceedings, as well as Gunnison to visit his daughters during the day. And then he can also visit his attorneys in Denver. But again, he cannot, you know, spend the night in Gunnison or Denver, and the court did give him permission to spend the night in Fremont County if there is a court date that's, you know, super early in the morning, or if he had one previously. So he can spend the night in Fremont County in regards to court, if that makes sense. Okay, so then and then he had Judge Ramsey Lama had a couple of housekeeping measures that he wanted to talk about. One was about the hacking that he had mentioned went on the Monday prior. So let me look at my calendar to make sure. So that was Monday, January 24th, when we were no longer allowed to have our phones in the courtroom. The judge said that the IT folks had determined that there was no hack, and he had mentioned something like maybe some individual might have been live streaming in the courtroom, but didn't have evidence to show exactly who it was. But as of right now, we are still not allowed to have our phones in the courtroom. So we can have our laptops to take notes, but we can't have access to our Twitter accounts and things like that. And so that's kind of what we are dealing with right now. Okay, so now to the motions about, you know, the discovery violations, and in particular CBI or former CBI agent Joseph Cahill. Defense is saying he's being held in contempt, and he's been withholding information to the defense in discovery. So they first asked him, and he was subpoenaed until the court date on February 1st. And they first asked him, you know, about on November 9th, did he know that he was going to resign? And he said, no, I didn't know that I was going to be resigning. Because that was the last time he was in court, was November 9th, I believe, was on the stand. And then they kind of had to move his court date back, or for him to be on called as a witness to take the stand. Sorry, I'm going line by line, and sometimes I write shorthand, and so I have to think about what I meant. So bear with me real quick. Okay, so excuse me. So when he testified on December 9th, the whole him wanting to leave and CBI wasn't in the works, he testified. And the unlawful discharge of his firearm was November 19th, and so the investigation happened afterwards. So there is an internal investigation going on right now with, you know, former CBI agent Joseph Cahill, because he allegedly discharged his firearm in his home, and they're doing an internal investigation on that. And he, in December 8th, he resigned from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. And some have said that he's been the lead CBI agent from the beginning. They did talk about when he started with the Suzanne Morphew case on May 13th. So that's just 3 days after Suzanne went missing, was when he started investigating the case. And you have to remember also, Agent Cahill was on military leave from March until May 10th is what he testified to. And that's after Barry Morphy was arrested. And that's a lot of months, and they're finalizing the arrest affidavit and things like that, and possibly getting some DNA back and other evidence back from labs and things like that. So you have to remember that he was away serving our country for a couple of months while CBI, FBI, Chaffee County Sheriff's Office was investigating this case. So Iris Eaton is the one who is questioning Joseph Cahill, and she is asking him, what was the sync meetings that they had pretty regularly, and how often did they have them? And she even asked him, how do you even spell sync, just for the record? So it's spelled SYNC, and it's meetings held with all agencies. Maybe he said at the time, at the very beginning of the investigation, it was like twice a week they were having it. But when he said when he came back from the military, he said it was more sporadic. It wasn't as often. So he also kind of explained a little bit about SmartForce. Anyone could have access to SmartForce. That was among the agencies that were investigating the Suzanne Morphew disappearance. So then they show a couple of exhibits, and these are, well, they don't show them, they present them to the court. We didn't get to exactly see them, but it's an email from May 2nd from Joseph Cahill to Commander Alex Walker. And remember, Alex Walker is, from what the prosecution says, he's one of the lead investigators on this case. He first started out, I believe, with the district attorney's office, and now he's with the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office. And I might have that. I think that's right. But he was with one agency, and then during the middle of the investigation switched to another agency, but they were still investigating the same case. So she's asking Joseph Cahill, like, when were these meetings? And particularly, did you have, he was asked about a sync meeting that happened after June 1st. He said, I don't recall that specific meeting. But there is an email from May 2nd from Joseph Cahill to Commander Alex Walker, and there's a Google Drive link attached to this email. And he just said, Alex, my apologies. I have attached some revisions to the arrest warrant through Google Drive. And this is also CC'd to Derek Graham, Agent Kirby, Agent Harris, John Speasy, and another deputy with Chaffee County Sheriff's Office. And the email reads, he thought that the arrest affidavit or arrest warrant lacks statement details from Barry Morphew from May until July of 2020. He also thought that there was lack of specificity used to clear them. I think other DNA I think when I wrote that, it's talking about other potential suspects. And then also arrest warrant lacks forensic examination. So these are kind of his notes on what he had seen with the arrest warrant in May. It was May 2nd of 2021. So this is just a few days before they make the arrest of Barry Morphew. He said, I'll be back on the road on Tuesday heading to Colorado. These are simply my opinions, he said. he asks, Iris Eaton then asks Cahill about reading through the arrest warrant, the arrest affidavit. And he goes, I remember going through the arrest warrant through page 19. I went through the AW, or arrest warrant, not in detail. That's my recollection. So he's being questioned about how well did you know the arrest warrant, and how much did you revise it and work through it. And he's pretty much saying, and through page 19. We do learn during this questioning that Cahill had ordered the transcript from the testimony that he did on November 9th. And, you know, he's asking, or she's asking Cahill, do you recall the court asking you how long the arrest warrant was that you reviewed? And then he asked for the transcript. So, he throughout his testimony, he wants to see the documentation. He wants to see the reports, so that I guess he doesn't contradict what he had previously said. I'm not really sure, but he that's what he was doing. He was asking for the actual reports, or the actual transcript in this case. So now we get into the DNA. So now they're asking Agent Cahill about the DNA. He was first assigned, like I said, on May 13th for this case, and his partner was Derek Graham. And he also worked with Alex Walker, FBI agent Grusing Harris, and Chaffee County Sheriff's Office. They asked him specifically what you worked on this case. Remember, Agent Cahill turned in his resignation in December 8th of 2021. So, and he said, you know, I interviewed Barry Morphew multiple times. I inspected Morphew's truck when it was being forensically inspected, reviewed evidence in the case, items in the house, the car. DNA was a component in the disappearance of Suzanne Morphew, and reviewed the reports from the DNA results. So this is where we start getting into the DNA. Agent Cahill confirmed that numerous DNA samples were processed, confirmed that that they considered all DNA, confirms that there was unknown DNA on the glove box of Suzanne Morphew's Range Rover, and Iris Eaton asked Cahill very detailed questions, and Agent Cahill reminds her that, you know, I'm not the author of these reports, I just reviewed them. Iris Eaton, you know, made him confirm that he had not seen the final version of the arrest affidavit. Agent Cahill confirmed that Barry Morphew was excluded from the glove box as a DNA contributor. Iris Eaton brings up that there was an unknown DNA found on Suzanne's bike, and according to Agent Cahill's testimony, he was not aware of this. And then Iris Eaton was like, well, didn't the arrest affidavit state that? And doesn't it say that you edited and reviewed the arrest affidavit? And the Agent Cahill said, no, it did not. Iris Eaton then showed the arrest affidavit to Agent Cahill and asked him, does this refresh your memory? And then he said it does. Iris Eaton then states that Agent Cahill is an adverse witness, and she requested a permission to lead. Agent Cahill had to answer how much of the 126-page arrest affidavit he had read. He got to page 19, like I had said previously. And then Iris Eaton asked, were you aware of the DNA results regarding foreign DNA on Suzanne's bike? And he says, I do not recall. First DNA report came back on July 1st of 2020. So that's a couple months after Suzanne was reported missing on May 10th. And that's just like preliminary DNA results. The results informed them that it indicated foreign DNA on the bike rims, or the bike brakes, the handlebars. There was reportedly also foreign DNA on the rear seat cushion of Suzanne's Range Rover. But again, Barry Morphew was reportedly excluded from this DNA that they collected. Barry Morphew also excluded from bike brakes, handlebars of Suzanne's bike. Iris Eaton asked if the task force considered the foreign DNA profiles. Then they present a new exhibit, Exhibit 24. It's a email between Cahill, Graham, Grusing, asking about the DNA found on the bike seat and the bike helmet. And this is dated August 19th of 2020. And Cahill says that he doesn't recall seeing this email. Remember, there's those couple months that he just was in the military serving our country and then came back and trying to catch up. Agent Rogers, which is a CBI agent that's working in the lab, she's the one that printed out this email and produced it to the defense. And so this is why I think Iris Eaton is wondering, why is it that we're getting some of these emails from one source and not getting it from Agent Cahill? And so, you know, Agent Cahill says, you know, I'm not disputing this. I'm just saying I must have, you know, not overlooked this email. So now Iris Eaton is asking about, when you testified, talking to a former Agent Cahill, when you testified at the preliminary hearing, you stated there wasn't foreign DNA found. If that was my, and then he said, you know, if that was my recollection at the time, then yes. And they talked about how they swabbed the bike grip, bike helmet, bike brakes, exterior of the helmet, interior cushions of the helmet, and Cahill says yes, yeah. And he, you know, she's asking about these emails. You know, did you find this email when, you know? And he goes, no, I don't believe so. You know, and she goes, well, was it one of the emails that maybe gotten auto-deleted? So after, in CBI, according to CBI, after a certain amount of time, I think it's like 90 days, they said, their emails get automatically deleted. And so because he was, you know, serving in the military for a couple months, he didn't see some of these emails, and they possibly could have gotten deleted, or, like, I think he later testified, overlooked. So then they talk about a conversation that happened October 6th of 2020, which Iris Eaton and the defense only know because of a communication log. And it's a conversation that, according to the comm log, Agent Caitlin Rogers with CBI, who works with the DNA and gets the results from the lab, memorializes this conversation that she had with Agent Cahill about the DNA. And, you know, it seemed like Agent Cahill on the stand didn't memorialize it and didn't make it such a big deal as much as Agent Rogers had made in the comm log. And it was talking about the DNA found on the glove box. She had said, and it's the item that we're talking about that was swabbed was the glove box. They name it 27 swab.1. So it's 27.1. And they said that, or Agent Rogers says, she believed that the DNA was left by a potential perpetrator of the crime. So this is what she thinks. And this is a conversation that she's remembering she had with Agent Cahill. And she went on to say that she believed that her vehicle, the Range Rover, Suzanne's Range Rover, was involved in some criminal activity. This is a conversation in the comm log on October 12th. And Agent Cahill kind of recalls the conversation, and he does make a request for the lab, for the DNA to be sent off for forensic analysis. So, and the pieces of the DNA that they want to send to the forensic analysis is the DNA found on the rear passenger seat, as well as the DNA found on the glove box. So this is 24.1, which is the DNA found on the rear passenger seat, and 27.1 is the DNA found on the glove box. Just trying to be as specific as I wrote in my notes. They wanted to do this analysis so that they could see if the two foreign DNA samples were the same male. So, and Agent Cahill said that he thought the conversation was a group discussion that led to this request amongst Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, CBI, and even the DA's office, is what he's trying to recall. And now they present another exhibit, October 13th, 2020, requesting the forensic analysis in response to the previous exhibit. And they were put into CODIS, this CODIS system. It's like a system that if a crime gets occurred, or if there's fingerprints or a sample of spit or something from a crime scene, it goes into CODIS, which is like a system where unsolved cases are, like sexual assault cases. I guess I could just Google exactly what CODIS means for people that don't know, but it is being brought up a lot in court. Yeah, it's a combined DNA index system, and it's and it is the generic term used to describe the FBI's program of support for criminal justice DNA databases, as well as the software used to run these databases. So it's a database of DNA. So they're going to run the two DNA swabs from the glove box as well as the rear back seat of Suzanne's Range Rover. So that's not requested until October 13th, 2020. They said that the report was rushed and they got it November 12th of 2020. So on the Exhibit 26 that the defense admits to the court is a CBI full case report identified the CODIS upload, which was requested by Agent Cahill. And it talks about this DNA found on the glove box, that it's been a big topic amongst the court proceedings. So there's communication between Agent Cahill on December 2nd and Detective Burgess with Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, and it was by phone. At least that's what Agent Cahill thought. He didn't remember if it was an exchange from email or if it was on the phone. And so, Iris Eaton asked questions about that conversation. I think what they were discussing on the phone was this CODIS upload. And then out of the blue, Iris Eaton asks Cahill, before you resign, did you review your emails? And he said, yes, I did review my emails, So then Iris Eaton presents Exhibit 26. It's an email received just last week that Cahill was copied on. And, Iris Eaton says, do you recall looking at this email? And he said, I don't recall this email from Detective Burgess. My recollection was that we spoke on the phone. And she goes, would you dispute that email? He goes, no. So he's not denying that he didn't get these emails. He just is saying he doesn't recall. Exhibit 27 is a CODIS forensic hit, is the title of the email. And it's an email written by Detective Burgess, received a call from Arizona about a hit confirmation from the CODIS database, from the DNA that they collected in the Range Rover versus DNA that detective collected in Arizona. So, you know, Detective Burgess asked for an email from the person he talked to on the phone from Arizona about the hit, the CODIS hit, and asked for basic information about their investigation in Arizona, Tempe, Arizona. So someone is asking, was Suzanne's car taken 5/10? That's a great question. I mean, from what I understand, they wouldn't let anyone go into the home and leave the home besides that one time where they had Barry Morphew go into the home to collect biking gear, biking shorts, so that the dogs could sniff Suzanne's biking shorts and have a scent to go search for her. And that was the only time law enforcement let someone go into the home once they took over the investigation, and that was May 10th, and that was late May 10th was when Barry Morphew was allowed into his home that one time. And her car was parked in the garage, and so I don't see them allowing someone to take the car away while there's an investigation into her, and that's her car. So I believe they searched her car, obviously, and investigated the car on May 10th. But they haven't specifically said there was a search warrant that was issued May 10th, you know. So, good question, though, whoever that was. They did not talk about telematics on the Range Rover in court. I saw another question. I'll answer that real quick. Back to the conversation with Detective Burgess and the detective in Arizona, and then a subsequent conversation with Detective Burgess and Agent Cahill. They talked about, they just wanted basic information about what happened in Tempe, Arizona. That's a hit, which that's not like, they talked a little bit about the CODIS language. There was a December 3rd meeting about this CODIS hit, and Agent Cahill doesn't remember that email in specific, and there's specific emails about let's meet this day and talk about this, and he doesn't remember specific emails pertaining to this December 3rd meeting about this CODIS hit. He didn't take notes. He testified to. He did authorize a report from December 3rd, which is Exhibit 20. However, he didn't attach the emails from the report. And this email, I guess, was forwarded onto the detective from Tempe, Arizona. And it was something like, I want to talk about this lead, how to go forward. She said the detective in Tempe, Arizona had said that the suspect grabbed a woman behind a convenience store and forced her to have sex with her. And then, Iris Eaton is asking Cahill, do you remember having a follow-up meeting with the team about this? And he said, no, I do not. And then Iris Eaton is asking Cahill, do you recall saying it's nothing, I've got this? Because other investigators have testified that that is what he said. And he says, I don't remember. I don't recall saying that. He said, I know that I told Detective Burgess that I would call the detective from Tempe, Arizona. But, however, he didn't ask for any police reports and didn't obtain any names of the leads from the investigation in Tempe, Arizona. He did ask the detective about the description of the suspects, the looks of the suspects, and Agent Cahill had told others that none of those descriptions looked like Barry Morphew and are associated with Suzanne Morphew's disappearance. And again, he knew that Barry Morphew's DNA was not on the glove box, Agent Cahill. And he's testifying that, he believed he called the scientist, CBI agent Rogers, then after getting in this information from Tempe, doesn't recall discussing this with anyone on the team before calling Tempe. On February 2nd of 2021, so a couple months after getting the report back, he filed a report and uploaded it to the SmartForce, which is this like database that different multiple agencies can talk to one another on. And it was a CODIS hit. It talked about the team knew about it on February 2nd of 2021. This is many months before the preliminary hearing. This is a letter that was addressed May 19th, 2021, Exhibit 19. It was a letter that was addressed to Agent Adams in Pueblo, Agent Cahill, Detective Burgess, signed, and it was also sent to Detective Burgess, but it was signed by Agent Megan Doogie, who is a CBI agent that works in the lab as well on the DNA. And it is a letter about the 3 matches from the glove box. The 3 sexual assault cases from across the country. It was the Tempe, Arizona, Phoenix, as well as Chicago, Illinois. Cahill claims he did not get this letter until it was provided to him by the DA, even though in the email it was CC'd to him. The letter informed that the glove box DNA contained a partial DNA profile based on limited genetic data. That's very, very, very important to note. Oh, that was weird. Okay, for a second I thought only one person was watching, and then it switched. Anyways, so that's a really important piece. Cahill claims he inadvertently deleted it. This email that says that there was 3 matches. So he, I guess at this point, thinks there's just that one Tempe, Arizona match. And it wasn't until October where he was made aware of the unsolved sex assault cases. And October 29th, there's an email from Cahill to Agent Doogie, who first initially had sent this letter to them addressed to all those different people about the 3 different matches. And Cahill on October 29th of 2021 says, "It seems like an error or inadvertently deletion on my part regarding about the 3 DNAs that the previous email." And so he's admitting that I don't know what happened to that email. I didn't see it. Exhibit 28 is email represents the communication between Agent Doogie and Agent Cahill. Again, Agent Cahill doesn't believe he had gotten the May 19th email. He talked with Detective Burgess about the Illinois match. So Detective Burgess had testified that he was kind of over the Illinois match. They want to kind of follow, the detectives on the stand said that they want to follow every lead, so they kind of assigned each agent or each detective to one specific match. Detective Burgess was over the Illinois match, Detective Cahill was over the Tempe one, and then I think eventually Detective Cahill said he would look into the Phoenix one as well. And he had mentioned in one of the hearings that he knew of a detective in Arizona, and so he had connections with a police department or something down there, so he thought he could go ahead and take that. Someone is asking, was the DNA found on the bike the same as the glove box? That has not been determined. That hasn't been mentioned in the courtroom. They're just saying that there's foreign DNA found on the bike and there's foreign DNA found on the glove box, but they're not the same match or anything like that. They're just saying that there's foreign DNA on specific parts of the bike as well as specific parts in the Suzanne's Range Rover, so they're not linked. I just want to make that clear. Some people are questioning about that. Let me look back at my notes. Talked with Dr. Okay. Iris Eaton is asking Cahill, did you talk about the Tempe match? And he says, I don't recall if we did or not. And then he doesn't recall a second conversation about the match. And again, he reminds the court, as well as Iris Eaton, that he wasn't an active participant in the investigation in May. And May was a really important, it seems like a really important month, because obviously that's Suzanne's 1 year anniversary of her disappearance, but also that's when Barry Morphew was arrested. The arrest affidavit or the arrest warrant was issued, and so they had to finalize that before Barry Morphew got arrested. Then there was a short recess. Oh, sorry, I touched my computer. Okay. Iris Eaton said that she would just need 2 hours 2 hours to question Cahill, and it was way more than 2 hours. There was some, and Iris Eaton said, you know, there was a lot of pauses in between, you know, her questions versus when he would respond. And so she wanted to make note in the court that of the pauses and to give her more time. She's pretty much asking for more time, and the judge didn't seem to have an issue with that, gave her more time. So now we're talking about an Exhibit 18, which is on May 26th. It's an email about this blue shirt, and it's an email between Agent Cahill, Agent Rogers, which is, again, she's the CBI agent that works in the lab, and Agent Graham and Detective Burgess with the Chaffee County Sheriff's Office. And it's this blue shirt that was found in a creek, I guess near the area, and it was submitted for examination, but there was no match to Barry Morphew's DNA. So that was just kind of like a side note that they wanted to mention. And this was the first time I had heard really anything about a blue shirt in the courtroom. On May 28th, 2021, this is again, Cahill did not know about the CODIS match letter in May, at the end of May. They had gotten the match in December of the Tempe, Arizona match, and then they got the match in May about Illinois, if that makes sense. So it was not until May when they got the 3 different match hits from the DNA found on the glove box, just to make sure that people know that. They had gotten the Tempe one in December, the Illinois one in May. Okay. We are only on like page 3 of my 16 pages of notes, sorry. Cahill claims that he would have produced the May 19th email had he seen it, is what he's saying. Tempe, Arizona case contained, so supposedly Iris Eaton asked, you know, Agent Cahill about the Tempe investigation that he went into, and Agent Cahill says so Agent Cahill's answering questions about the investigation that he did into the Tempe, Arizona match, and Iris Eaton is asking Agent Cahill, was it outside of a convenience store? And he said yes. And Iris Eaton asked, was there a DNA recovered from the woman in the Tempe case? And he said yes. And according to the report that he had gotten, there was 2 suspects in the Tempe, Arizona case. This is the first time we're even learning that there were 2, supposedly suspects in that Tempe, Arizona case. Iris Eaton asked if it was ever checked if Barry Morphy was involved in their cases and vice versa. And she's concerned that they checked if Barry Morphy could have committed a sex assault in Tempe, but not if the suspects in Tempe case could have been involved in the Suzanne Morphew case. They asked, could this unknown male have abducted Suzanne Morphew? And Agent Cahill talks about how they did look into if there was anyone else that assisted in the offense with Mr. Morphew. So they're talking about if he had any help in this alleged crime against Suzanne Morphew, if he had some alternative suspect, if they investigated into any alternative suspect. And then Iris Eaton makes the, asks the question or makes the statement saying, because you always had your focus on Morphew. And he responded to that and said, the evidence drove the investigation's focus to Mr. Morphew. They went back and forth over if not, there is the scientific data connecting the suspects in Tempe to the Suzanne Morphew's case. Iris Eaton eventually stated to Agent Cahill, there is no scientific reason for you to say no match. August 2nd, 2021, CBI supervisor brought up the defense motion attaching the CODIS letter, each of the match letters. So I guess in August 2nd is when the CBI supervisor started looking into this. There was Agent Cahill participated in a conference call and wrote a report about this meeting, and that's Exhibit 11, and it's Report 595, and it's about who's going to investigate which match. And Agent Cahill said that he was going to attempt to get the reports from Phoenix. And those reports weren't finalized until August 16th, 2021. And you got to remember, that preliminary hearing was around this time. I know that they split up the 4 days into two different times, but you got to remember they're getting these reports around the same time that the preliminary hearing is ongoing. Iris Eaton is, explaining to the judge and the court that this is a pattern of exculpatory evidence. There's no concealment of exculpatory evidence, and then the prosecution objects. She goes, do you dispute that DA Lindsay wanted you to follow up on Phoenix and Tempe? And Cahill said, it was my understanding to obtain the reports, but not to do the follow-up. Exhibit 29 is, this email was attached to Report 595, and it's dated August 3rd, so the following day, and it's attached with Alex Walker and Derek Graham, and it's getting reports from Tempe that are linked to this DNA profile. You're not doing this alone. And then Iris Eaton says, you're not doing this one investigation alone. You're a part of the CBI agency, so you have other agents to help you. Iris Eaton is asking if the Exhibit 29 was found in Cahill's emails, and then she's asking him, did you not read the police reports? And she's saying, you are one of the lead investigators and you didn't read the police reports? And he said, first of all, I was talking about, he was the lead investigator, I guess, according to him or according to CBI. But for clarification, I don't recall reading the entire report. So he didn't read the entire report, or he doesn't recall reading the entire report. This is a police report from Tempe, Arizona. He said that there was a discrepancy with the date, another sexual assault a few years later in Phoenix that matched the Tempe one, as well as an unsolved burglary. So there was an unsolved burglary and a Phoenix sexual assault that matched the Tempe sexual assault, that then the Tempe matched also the glove box DNA, the partial DNA. So the day that Cahill testified was only 8 days after he first became aware of the match. An email the defense shows Cahill actually emailed Tempe the same exact day he first became aware. I hope that clarifies that. One of the attachments to the report that Cahill wrote was a link to another unsolved burglary, the one in Phoenix, which is linked to the sexual assault cases in Tempe and Phoenix. And she asks, Iris Eaton asks Agent Cahill, do you don't recall receiving that? And he goes, no, I don't, not specifically, no. So he claims he doesn't specifically remember seeing this report about burglary, an unsolved burglary that's also attached to the Tempe and the Phoenix sexual assault cases. And she goes, there are actually people's names linked to those unsolved cases. Reports that you provided in the 595 report to Detective Burgess, those individuals have criminal histories involving sexual assaults. And he goes, I don't recall. So attachments to 595 is Exhibit 30, and Cahill doesn't recall the content but remembers them as attachments. You got to remember that the unsolved burglary case, as well as the unsolved sexual assault cases in Tempe and Phoenix, Tempe, Arizona, and Phoenix are unsolved cases and remain unsolved to this day. Cahill doesn't recall the content but remembers them as attachments. So he's trying to say, I remember attaching them, I don't remember exactly what's in the attachments. In the report, there's sexual assault history and criminal conviction. Do you remember talking with Agent Graham about this? Agent Cahill said, I don't. Your uploaded 595 and the attachments was made on August 16th of 2021. And I believe the last 2 days of the preliminary hearing was August 23rd and 24th. So that's like a week or a few days before when he testified, because he testified for the defense. He wasn't called, sorry, I have a hair in my mouth. He wasn't called, the prosecution did not call him. So, September 3rd, 2020, CBI email to and from the Holiday Inn talking about this chlorine, the smell, and the pool in room 225 where Barry Morphew stayed. Agent Cahill confirms that he has not seen the letter, but it was discussed and doesn't remember specific dialogue. Agent Cahill was asked if it is correct that Barry Morphew's DNA was found on Suzanne's bike seat and Suzanne's Range Rover. Agent Cahill replied, I have to refer to the report. The date of the report is June 8th of 2020. DNA on front passenger door, front driver's door, and back seat pocket. Then they talked about what is CODIS. It's a combined nationwide DNA database, including felony offenses. It's like a big computer database with allele and DNA marker discussion. So I had to look up what allele was, and an allele is one of 2 or more versions of a gene. So I have one for my parent, or one for my dad, and one for my mom. And an individual inherits 2 alleles for each gene, so one from each parent, like I just said. Though the term allele was originally used to describe variations among genes, it now also refers to variations among non-coding DNA sequences. So this is kind of how they collect DNA and they figure out who that person is if they have parts of their DNA from another case and connect the cases to each other. That makes sense. Remember, the preliminary hearing was, I want to make sure these dates are right. I have August 12th, 13th, 23rd, and 24th. Let me make sure in my calendar. 13th, oh, that doesn't make, oh, that's July. I'm looking at the wrong month. Sorry. Yes. So it was August, well, I don't know if it's 12th. I know it for sure it was 24th and 25th. Or no. Oh, this is 2020. Sorry, I'm in the wrong year. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Wow, I went way too back in my calendar. Sorry, guys. Okay. 11, 12 is, that would have been a Wednesday, Thursday. And then I know it was 23rd. I think it was August 9th and 10th, and then they waited a week, and then it was August 23rd and 24th. That's what it was. I had the wrong dates. Okay. My apologies, guys. So the defense asked Cahill to testify on August 23rd, but he didn't testify until August 24th, so the last day of the preliminary hearing. He had a Zoom meeting call on November 6th with Iris Eaton, previous to his testimony that he was going to have on November 9th. He was subpoenaed for the hearing, but finally was heard on February 1st. Reached out to Holbert about what to do with Eaton requests for a Zoom. And this is in regards to the civil matter that the intent to sue by Barry Morphew and his defense counsel. So from what I could understand from his testimony is that he didn't want to get in trouble to speak with Iris Eaton if there was a civil matter. And so that's why he reached out to the prosecution. So Holbert couldn't advise him because he's not his lawyer, is what Holbert told. And Mark Holbert is one of the prosecution attorneys. He's kind of been the lead ever since former ADA stepped away and went to Pueblo, Jeff Lindsay. So ever since Jeff Lindsay has left, he has now taken over. So there was a quick minute. This is when we went to lunch break. And I did notice when we came back from lunch break, a sweet letter that Barry Morphew had passed to Mallory that said, I love you. So we're back from lunch break. Now we're talking about Cahill's experience with DNA. And he's saying that he just receives reports from the lab to see if there's a DNA hit to follow up on the lead. And it can be used in the investigation. He said he had limited experience in collecting DNA via swabs. He said he did have experience reading records. And Mark Holbert is now asking Cahill, what does a match mean? Agent Cahill says it's a lead. It's a result of keyboard search. But he said you can't arrest someone based on just a match. It's limited genetic data and used as a lead only. DNA report with general values, no numerical value assigned. That's very important. It is a lead. It is not that's what a match means. It's an investigative lead. Then we kind of take a quick, there was an administration matter. There was an affidavit from a paralegal about the timing of the discovery, about the report, the 595 report from Agent Cahill that he produced to the defense. The defense is saying that former ADA Jeff Lindsay didn't know about it, even though it was produced. I guess it was a conflict of when they received this report that Agent Cahill is testifying about. And it's about the Pharaoh scan issue since August 2nd and raised it again on November 9th. Did finally receive it in January, so the defense only received it in January, but they had been wanting it since August. It was pictures and renderings of the Morphew house. it was provided to them 4 months before the trial, is what the prosecution is trying to tell the court. Okay, so Mark Holbert is trying to tell the court that as soon as he was made aware about the defense not getting the Pharaoh scans, he contacted CBI that specific day and was given the Pharaoh scans on January 2nd and immediately handed them over to the defense. So now we're back to questioning Cahill. So there was like a little sidebar during the court proceedings. Is there any questions I can answer real quick? I'm going to take a break and take a quick look at some questions. Were there VINs given on the Range Rover? I don't believe they didn't mention that in court. Is it possible the DNA is from former owner of the Range Rover? That's a great question. They haven't talked about former owners of the Range Rover. I'm not sure if Suzanne is the one and only owner of that Range Rover, if it was a used car. I'm not sure. That's a great question for someone. Barry Morphew obviously could answer that. The defense probably knows that. Obviously, I'm sure the investigators know that. Someone's asking about the 20,000 pages of email dump. I will get to that, Troy Skinner. I will get to that. Someone's asking about Suzanne's flowers and cards. I don't know what question and what they're referring to. Okay, let me take a sip of this. All right. So, on Mother's Day, were there flowers and cards for Suzanne? Not that I know of. That has not been mentioned in court at all. So, I don't know. I feel like that would have been presented already with either in the preliminary hearing or all these motions hearings. I feel like we would have heard about that. And none of the body cam video we have seen any flowers or cards for Suzanne, but who knows? I don't know. All right, so back to February 1st, the motions hearing, my notes. Agent Cahill's still on the stand. Okay, it's Exhibit 33 is an email Cahill received discussing the civil suit and notice of claim to contact a county attorney. And this is when Iris Eaton says, "Can I get credit for the pauses?" And she's kind of concerned about the timing that she has left to question him. It's an email between Holbert and Cahill about testifying and how to handle it. And Mark Holbert said to contact Iris Eaton about what the testimony will be about. So Mark Holbert is telling Cahill, yes, talk to Iris Eaton about what you're supposed to be questioned about during the testimony for February 1st. On October 20th through 26th, emails from that range. Oh, the emails between Iris Eaton and Cahill, as well as Cahill to Holbert asking about, can I meet with Iris Eaton before the testimony, things like that. So that was the time frame, was October 20th through the 26th. Cahill said he had reached back to Eaton but hadn't heard back. Holbert responded, Eaton has subpoenaed a lot of people. And then there was relevance questioned. And then Iris Eaton says, this is a conspiracy and this is someone's life, talking about Barry Morphy's life. You know, you had him in jail for 5 months. You have these, Iris Eaton says these are, bogus accusations, things like that. And we're talking about someone's life. This is Barry Morphy's life. And this is kind of when things got heated in the courtroom on February. Iris Eaton said, since this case, law enforcement and the DA has worked to hide exculpatory evidence from the defense. And, Iris Eaton claimed that Mark Holbert kind of wanted to talk with Agent Cahill about his testimony. And that's not at all what Cahill was trying to say on the stand. He was saying, no, I was only talking to Mark Holbert about how do I handle the civil suit, and talking to Iris Eaton. The judge even said, you are making a huge accusation with the statement about the hiding exculpatory evidence and the conspiracy and things like that. And it ended up they had to have the parties had to address the bench, and there was a bench conference or a bench meeting. So what happens then is that, both sides, both the defense and the prosecution, goes up to the judge, and they have a little side meeting, and he puts on this white noise so that no one else in the courtroom can hear kind of what they're whispering and talking about. So that happened, and it happened for quite a bit of time. Let me scroll down. We're on page 7 of 16, guys. Woohoo, we're getting there. The judge says, when he comes back, he says, I do not want this to be a fishing expedition. I guess the court wanted to do their own investigation, and he had suggested that the defense and the prosecution do their own investigation about certain case law, I guess, or something that they didn't kind of divulge to the courtroom. So they had a break, and we came back around 2:05 or 2:15 or something like that. Now they're talking about Exhibit 31, the defense's exhibit, and it's in an email between Mark Holbert and Cahill, talking about speaking on November 9th, testifying on November 9th. And, Iris Eaton is asking Cahill, they never prepared you, asking again if, Mark Holbert and the prosecution prepared Cahill for his testimony on November 9th, and he said no. And in this call to Iris Eaton, we learned that Cahill recorded Eaton, and he didn't ask. And he had asked CBI if he could record Iris Eaton, and they said no, but he did it anyways. And he claims that he did it so that he could memorialize and have a record of it for his own record. And I guess the CBI made a transcript of it, and Cahill didn't know that there was a transcript of the recording. He says, I don't recall if I used my personal phone or my work phone. And he says, I don't know how it got in the hands of the DA. And of course, and it sounds like the DA sent the transcript of the recording to the defense because they have to hand over evidence. And he said, Iris Eaton is asking, do you know where it was or it is right now? He said, no. Did you record meetings with the CBI, export statements? And he said, no. What about Holbert? No investigators? He said, no. And then Iris Eaton goes, but you recorded me? And he goes, yeah, I did. And she questions him, did you record any sync meetings in 2020? He said, no. And this seemed to really irk Iris Eaton because she had brought it up later on in the court proceedings on February 1st about him recording her without her knowledge. now they're talking about the testimony that he was going to bring to the prelim, and, you know, asking him questions about, when did you know that the district attorney's office has, you know, called off the subpoena for you to testify? And he's like, I don't remember I was ever under a subpoena. And then they're talking about an exhibit 34. It's an email about a final list of witnesses for the preliminary hearing. And it was printed off by Agent Doogie and obviously given to the defense. And Iris Eaton asks him, did you know that you were the DA witness list, on the DA's witness list? And he said, I knew about the 8th and 9th, but not the 23rd and 24th. I was asked to review Morphew's statements. So I guess he was going to testify if the district attorney's office had called him about Morphew's statements to the CBI agents. Now we switched gears and we're talking back about the DNA on the glove box. Before I do that, let me make sure. Oh yeah, Iris Eaton kind of implied what Cahill had done by recording her without her knowledge was illegal, but in the state of Colorado, it's a one-party consent state, so if one person on the phone call knows that they're recording, you can do it. It is legal to do in Colorado. So when the prosecution asked Cahill about the recordings, he says, you knew that Colorado's the first, only a one-party consent state. And he said, yes, you know, and so he knew he was in his legal right to record the conversation with Iris Eaton. And so, but, you know, Iris Eaton was kind of saying, you know, it's not great that he did this, and only did it when they were on a phone call together, and not did it when he was, you know, conducting an investigation and talking to the sync meetings and all these other things that I had listed. So I just wanted to make that clear. Sorry. Okay, so back to the DNA on the glove box and the testimony during the prelim. So they're looking at you know, Cahill said, I can't speak to the gender of the sample. And Iris Eaton had asked him, did you review the DNA in the case? And he said, I did not. Sending in the DNA into CODIS on October 8th, Cahill said, I'd never seen this before. Did Agent Doogie send off the swabs, or if it was a match, or... And he said, I can't answer that. You didn't know about the Tempe sex assault. And then he referred to the December interview he had with the detective. Did the detective ask you if it was outside the convenience store? And Holbert objected and was like, what's the purpose of this preliminary hearing and this hearing or whatever? And Eaton is trying to show that Cahill has inconsistencies in his statements. So that's why she's bringing up what he said in the preliminary hearing. She talks about the transcript, and Judge Ramsey Lama says, you know, he's reviewed the transcripts from the preliminary hearing. You got to remember that Judge, you know, Patrick Morphy was the judge during the prelim, and now we have a new judge presiding. So Judge Ramsey Lama has had to play kind of catch up and look over a lot of homework, I'm sure, when he's going home at night. You know, even though he's not on the bench, he has homework, and he's looking back at some of the previous court hearings and things like that. So when DA cross-examines you, they didn't ask you anything about the Tempe investigation, is what Iris Eaton is saying to Cahill. And he says, I don't recall if they did or not. using this witness to quail any type of evidence of the CODIS matches, serious allegations they are suggesting about whether or not, they are suggesting it. Hold on. So Iris Eaton is saying that they had the DNA matches way in advance before the preliminary hearing, which, the prosecution is saying that's a serious allegation and is irrelevant on whether they brought up the Tempe or the CODIS match. So I hope that is clarifying why Iris Eaton is questioning Cahill like this. And the district attorney's office, or the district attorney, Mark Holbert with the prosecution is saying, we provided it long before the preliminary hearing. They talked about how, yes, the discovery wasn't as organized as it should have been probably, but it was like a big dump when they, it was like over, I think it was 50,000 pages of evidence. And the prosecution says, I don't see how it is remotely relevant to anything as far as the preliminary hearing goes. Okay. We're on page 8 now. Woohoo. Ongoing investigation of a partial match for a foreign DNA that wouldn't be exculpatory, but the defense is free to inquire into what law enforcement is doing with that information. Rule 16 states that if it's exculpatory, that it has to be handed over. Court can't limit those inquiries. It's a pretty broad rule. And the judge overrules the objection. I hope I haven't lost people. So Iris Eaton is questioning his testimony that he gave at the prelim. Okay, people are with me. Good. Okay. And Iris Eaton is questioning a conversation that Cahill had at lunch with Mark Holbert. And Mark Holbert said, I guess during lunch hour, what do you know about the CODIS and things like that. And on August 24th, Cahill testified that he didn't reveal information of the extent of the investigation that were provided in the 595 report. And Graham, Walker, and Cahill worked collectively obtaining the reports from the CODIS link. The judge gave Iris Eaton 10-minute warning right now. Did you recall there was some confusion when I was asking you questions? Iris Eaton asked Cahill. He said yes. Did you testify that there were 2 suspects in the Tempe case? And he said yes. And then no information. But they had no information on the 2 suspects that were identified in the 595 report. Testifying to the general, not to the specific 595 report. So he was just testifying generically, but not specifically to that 595 report that they had already handed over to the defense at this point. She talks and asks him questions about the meeting in August that they had about the CODIS investigation. And Agent Cahill says, I don't really recall that meeting. And, she says, did you not respond? Or did the prosecution didn't ask you about it? And he says, I don't recall. When Agent Cahill was being questioned by Iris Eaton, he was referring to a February 2021 report and not any other report, is what Agent Cahill was trying to say to Iris Eaton. And she goes, when I was questioning you, I asked you about the convenience store sex assault. And he goes, yes, you didn't reveal that there was another sex assault and burglary that was linked. And he goes, my response was to the best of my ability to that question. And then she goes, you didn't, the prosecution didn't ask you about the report 595. And he goes, no, I don't think so. And then, and then she goes, tell me now if I ask you something and you need help interpreting. She's asking about his investigation into the Phoenix DNA match, and she says, you know, you didn't follow up on the Phoenix DNA match, and you didn't work on the Illinois match, but you talked to Detective Burgess, who was on that Illinois, investigation, and she wanted the court to notice the transcript from the preliminary hearing when she's talking about these DNA matches. And he goes, as we just established, I think about the Tempe, Phoenix, Illinois investigation. 2 suspects were in the Tempe, and there was confusion as to what that meant. Even the judge was confused at the time. 2 named individuals that were identified in his investigation in Tempe. By the time he testified, detective in Tempe, they had 2 suspects that did not match 27.1. So it was a partial unknown to a partial unknown. Does that make sense? I hope that it makes sense, because that's what was testified. So when they say match to a sexual assault case, an unknown sexual assault case in Tempe, Arizona, it's a partial unknown to a partial unknown is the match. Now it's cross-examination. So now Mark Holbert is questioning Agent Cahill, and he's asking him about what he knows about CODIS and alleles, and if he had scientific knowledge about DNA matches, and he said it's kind of outside of his realm. He talked to him about his language in the report and the CODIS letter. He said Cahill said that he didn't have the scientific knowledge. He said, Agent Cahill says, I believe I spoke with them on August 3rd about the match letter, but didn't talk about the alleles. And now Mark Holbert is talking about when Agent Cahill was taken off the case, the Morphew case. And it was around after he testified in late August. DA office, based on his performance on the August preliminary hearing, that he would no longer be working on this case. And Agent Kirby Lewis told Agent Cahill about this and didn't give him specifics as to what he said during the preliminary hearing that they weren't happy about. They just said that based on his performance during the August preliminary hearing, the DA's office no longer wants him working on the case. That's all he knew. Why? I guess DA Linda Stanley was upset about his overall performance at the preliminary hearing. His testimony was over the match letters. So that's what he testified in August. Oh, sometimes okay. Okay, Mark Holbert now asked him, when you were asked about, when Agent Cahill was asked to testify during the preliminary hearing, it was late at night, the night before. Did they tell you what you would be testifying on? He said no. So what did you rely on as far as how did he prepare himself? How did Agent Cahill prepare himself to testify on August 24th? He just said he recollected some of the he talked about how complex the investigation was, and he kind of looked over the notes, I guess, he had taken into this investigation. And Mark Holbert asked him, did you have things wrong in your testimony? He said yes. Then he talked about the changes he made to the AW, the arrest warrant, that Cahill would have liked more details here and that there needed more information on other suspects. And then he also wanted more details of their efforts to clear the other alternative suspects. So Cahill wanted that. So the Mark Holbert and the prosecution is trying to show that Cahill wanted them to clarify these other potential suspects and how they, those were no longer leads to them. He said that the defendant pointed suspects at various people, and you and your team cleared the other potential suspects. And Cahill says, yes. They had nothing to do with the CODIS hit. And he said, no. In that email, you weren't asked to put in this CODIS hit. Remember that the court order for the pretrial publicity was made on June 4th. And also to keep emails. So any emails regarding this case, the court ordered all agencies, CBI, FBI, Chaffee County Sheriff's Office, anyone that worked on the Suzanne Morphew disappearance to keep those emails for discovery. Uh-oh. My phone is about to die. Hold on. Hopefully that will. Okay. So when Mark Holbert was asking Cahill about the different various suspects and people that they followed up on and led, and if they had any matches to the CODIS hit, he pretty much said that there was not enough data to develop a profile from, and that's according to Agent Rogers, that the data was very limited and it was only a lead, but not a very good lead from those CODIS hits. Defense 31 exhibit. Mark Holbert talks about how he encouraged Cahill to talk to the defense when Cahill was concerned about the civil suit against the agencies and stuff that Barry Morphew and his defense team had filed. And, Mark Holbert says, that a witness doesn't have to talk to the defense or the prosecution in the state of Colorado, and you have the right to tape anyone. It's a one-party consent state. The reason you wanted to tape the defense attorney was she was pushing you, or because you wanted to have, and he goes, it was in my best interest to memorialize it. Yes, is what Cahill responded. So now they're talking about the CODIS hits again. December 2020, DNA report came back of the unknown male DNA hit. August, it was the Tempe PD CODIS hit. At the point, it was an investigative lead and that they were following up on that. And that's in August, is around the time of the preliminary hearing. It wasn't until February. There was not enough data to develop a profile. a quote that Agent Rogers, okay, this is an Exhibit 20, which is dated February 12th of 2020. So after she had said previously that this could be a potential suspect in the Suzanne Morphew case, now she's saying on February 12th of 2021, there was not enough data to develop a profile. This data was very limited, and it was only a lead, not a very good lead. And then May 19th and that was only in reference to the Tempe match, because they didn't have the Tempe match then. And then May 19th is when they had the other two matches. And Mark Holberts, asks Agent Cahill again, when you got the letter, you inadvertently deleted it, and you don't have recollection of receiving it. And he said, I don't recall forwarding it to anyone, is what he's saying. August 2nd, 2021, Cahill finally talked with Lindsay about it, and approximately 3 weeks before the preliminary hearing. You were extensively questioned about it by the defense and cross-examined by Holbert about it. August 3rd, sent out another email to get more reports from Tempe. August 16th, he got the reports back and emailed them and forwarded them to Detective Burgess. And this is when, so what just happened, if I can kind of go from my notes and trying to explain what the prosecution was showing, is that he made multiple efforts to forward it to other detectives and other people on the case to show them, I got the report back, I followed up, and August 16th is in the middle of the preliminary hearing, you have to remember. And so the prosecution says no further questions, and then now it's Iris Eaton's redirect. So because it's her witness, she gets to redirect. So now they're talking back about the report and attachments from his Agent Cahill's 595 report that he had emailed to Detective Burgess. This is Exhibit 21. And Exhibit 30 was the attachments from the 595 report. So 595 report is Exhibit 21. Exhibit 30 is the attachments. And Exhibit 35 is Report 599 that references other Tempe reports, and it has attachments and was finalized August 23rd of 2021. Okay. August 16th, it's noted that they're talking about the Phoenix match, and that was sent to Detective Burgess August 23rd. Tempe were sent to Burgess. So that's the day before he's supposed to testify in the prelim. He sends the report to Detective Burgess. Exhibit 11, let's be clear, the sexual assault that is linked to the Tempe sexual assault was in Phoenix, Arizona. So she's trying to clarify with Cahill the link. And he's saying, I don't recall. So I think he's getting confused with how she's asking the question, because she had to, I do remember, she did have to repeat the question to him. And then they talk about the Tempe case and the number of the case, like it's case number 200-72719. And then she talks about the CODIS case number, and it's like 11410 something. I didn't get to write down all the numbers. And he goes, the Tempe sexual assault case is linked to a case in Phoenix, Arizona. And he says the transcript says it, that's what it is. And then Holbert, I don't know how, Mr. Holbert stated to you that 27.1, talking about the DNA found on Suzanne's glove box, doesn't meet the CODIS standards, correct? And Cahill replied, I can't answer that. In the preliminary hearing. So she's reading the transcript from the preliminary hearing. And Cahill says, I can't answer that today. And he says, you know, it is noted that even in the court during the preliminary hearing, the court was even confused about the language about CODIS and CODIS matches. And Cahill mentions that he had a phone call with the scientists, but not in a meeting. And Holbert, during the preliminary hearing, had mentioned that he just knows a lot about CODIS and DNA and everything like that, so he just is familiar with this language. Okay. So they talk about the June 4th order, preservations of emails, texts, finally received it from Eton in November of 2021. So Cahill's claiming that he didn't see the email, that he was supposed to preserve his emails and texts until he finally got it from the defense. Cahill allegedly asked his colleagues about this order. And then Iris Eton says, is that when you started collecting and preserving the emails and texts? And he said, yes. But remember, CBI has a 90-day auto-delete policy. And so Iris Eton says, do you know how many emails were destroyed? And he says, I do not. And that's when former Agent Cahill is excused. So Agent Cahill comes off the stand. They talked about admitting to the court numerous exhibits, as well as testimony from previous, preliminary hearings and stuff that had to be exhibits too. Okay, so then this is kind of like closing arguments and about the discovery violation motion that's pending. And so Iris Eton takes the stand first, and we're like late in the evening. This is like an hour and a half left before 5 o'clock, and I could already tell we were going to go over the allotted time that we, typically court gets out at 5. But the court went on until 6:30. So I had to run out. I do want to preface that I did have to leave at 5 o'clock to do a live shot, and I came back into the courtroom, and I, kept taking notes and stuff. I would have to, because I don't have access to my phone, and that's my lifeline to my newsroom, I had to go back out and tell them, hey, I don't think I'm going to be able to do a live shot at 6:30. Can you just take some information that I gave you guys in 5 o'clock and put it down into just an anchor read so I can be in the courtroom and listen to what's going on? And so they said, yeah, that's fine. That's no big deal. But so there are a couple of minutes where I didn't get to listen to closing arguments by both sides. I just want to preface that. So, Iris Eton talks about how Barry Morphew is a human being, and the prosecution has treated him with no respect. And she talks about how all human beings should be held with respect, and even a human being should be treated as such, no matter, if they're on trial, accused, or not. She said, I've been practicing law for 28 years, and I've never seen the amount of discovery violations and patterns than in this case, is what she's saying. She said, I've seen cases of discovery violations from an expert, but nothing like this type of frenzy. She describes what the prosecution has done, the DA's office has done since arresting Barry Morphew as a frenzy. The visibility and this type of charge this human being has been dealing with, the combination of absolute disregard of court order, is what she's saying. So they're saying that Iris Eton is saying that the DA's office The prosecutors have not been following the Constitution and court orders. And she even said the Constitution has been thrown in the trash. Rule 16 doesn't seem to apply to them, is what she's saying. She talked a lot about how she put a lot of trust into the DA's office when they said they were going to file and hand over discovery, and they didn't. She said I was naive. She thought that she put too much trust into this district attorney's office. She says that she has this analogy that a compass has been spinning out of control, and they just want to lock up Morphew for the rest of his life, and forget about the exculpatory evidence, the things that they have allegedly that happened to Suzanne. We ask that the court put a finger on the spinning compass that she describes as happening with this district attorney's office, in order and have some sanctions on the district attorney's office and on this case. She says she wants the court to stop the misconduct, the intentional misconduct. All of the argument notes since we filed these motions, and she showed them, all these notes about she kind of held them up in the courtroom. Sorry, another hair, dog hair probably. She says, I can't keep track of all of them. Oh, and she said also that the worst part is that they believe what they're doing is okay. Talking about the district attorney's office, the prosecutors. She's saying that they're not following the court order and they think it's okay, is what Iris Eaton is trying to tell the judge and the court. Because she says that CBI gave defense a letter with exhibits right before the preliminary amongst a massive discovery that's unfair, or that it's fair game. You know about the CODIS, Miss Eaton. They believe that it's okay to not provide emails, texts, and Holbert said it isn't exculpatory. Hold on. Iris Eaton again talks about how she can't keep track of all the discovery violations and the misconduct that the district attorney's office has done throughout these court proceedings. She talked about how they just got a load of emails from CBI 8 months after Morphew was arrested, and Barry Morphew sat in jail for 5 months. And she says that the emails that they received, that there was a huge dump, was exculpatory. Some of them were exculpatory. And she shows this flash drive and she goes, here's a flash drive, Defense Exhibit 36, providing the court with just a sample of the exculpatory emails. So she's showing the court and providing them with all the emails that they just received the week before this hearing, February 1st hearing. She goes, the preliminary hearing was a sham. If we had the information that they had, the prosecution had, as well as the agents had on the 9th, 10th, and 23rd and 24th, Morphew, she said, wouldn't have spent an extra month in jail, is what Iris Eaton is saying. She's saying that the district attorney's office has shielded the defense from these emails, from this exculpatory evidence, from these exculpatory emails. And she claims that the judge would have immediately ruled right then and there. And again, she claims, what the worst part is that the defense or the prosecution believes what they're doing is okay. Because CBI gave defense a letter with exhibits right before the preliminary, amongst, again, a massive amount of discovery, that it was fair game and that they knew about the CODIS hits. And they, again, she says they think it's okay that they don't provide emails and text messages. And, she claims that Mark Holbert says it isn't exculpatory. And she said, we can't just redo the preliminary hearing. They can't. She went on to say that what they're doing, the pattern of them not handing over emails and texts, is going to just continue into the trial. And that's what she's afraid of. She said this could face a wrongful prosecution. She claims that they still don't have Morphew's phone, Suzanne's laptop, as well as Sheila's phone, as far as information from those three pieces. The Morphew's phone, Suzanne's laptop, as well as Sheila's phone. And Iris Eaton said when Lindsay had, made on record that he had said, I've never shook my obligation, and she says it was empty words. They did, the district attorney's office of the 11th Judicial District did have to hire people to go through the discovery to organize it better. The 4th Judicial District did come in to help out with that. And now Iris Eaton kind of turns it into, my client, Barry Morphew, has been sitting in jail for the first time in his life. He waived his right for, the preliminary hearing. But that CODIS letter match was already produced May 19th. There was 5 gigabytes of discovery. She says, we are working our butt off to get our client out of jail and away from these wrongful charges, is what she said. We didn't know at the time on August 6th when the judge said, when you can have this D-17 hearing, now or later, judge didn't have much time in his schedule. Prosecution was representing that they had provided all the discovery. She didn't know that there were some emails that would have helped them in the preliminary hearing, is what she's saying. And when Commander Alex Walker sent out the email to all the agencies talking about keeping the emails and keeping the text messages in regards to this case and preserving them, Iris Eaton says, she doesn't feel like Commander Walker explained it. And so some of those investigators overlooked it and didn't hand over all of the texts and emails that they had and didn't preserve them. She talks about how this case still remains, where's Suzanne? There's no physical evidence that Suzanne was murdered, and they have evidence that there was an alternate suspect, and it slips through the cracks, she says. Iris Eaton. She says that during the preliminary hearing, she would have cross-examined on the CODIS matches more, had she known, she says. Because that May 19th letter was the 3 matches, and they didn't have it, she claims. She says she didn't know that Alex Walker knew about the CODIS match, and had she known, that she would have probably questioned him about it as well, besides Agent Cahill. But she didn't know during the time of the preliminary hearing. She says they didn't give us the information that they had been sitting on. There's an email from Alex Walker to Cahill and others that says, please keep good notes. But she says she hasn't seen any notes from any meetings, which is very scary. What happened during those meetings? Why isn't no one taking notes after even, Commander Alex Walker is asking, take notes? Now, this is, again, Iris Eaton's closing arguments about why the judge should rule that the prosecution is violating the discovery, Rule 16. She says the only reason why they even knew about the CODIS hits so that they could question Agent Cahill was because of the comm log from the lab when they went into the preliminary hearing. But they didn't have the emails or the reports attached to emails about the CODIS hits. She said that we had trust that they being the prosecution, was following the rules. But in the meantime, they're having team meetings about CODIS and who's going to investigate CODIS. She says, Iris Eaton says, they don't want to know about the CODIS information. They want it to go away. They don't want the defense to know about the CODIS matches. There was no CODIS testimony and questions from the prosecution during the preliminary hearing because there was sincere problems with it. This would have been a different preliminary hearing, is what Iris Eaton is saying. She said, I did my best with the information that I had, questioning Cahill. She said something about how, Cahill was comparing Morphew description with this Tempe suspect like he was a serial rapist. This is impactful because he was fired from the investigation after giving his testimony. She claims that she impeached Cahill on so much of his testimony. She says he lied, he did not tell the truth, and he made inconsistent statements during his testimonies from the preliminary to November 9th to this February 1st hearing. September 2nd, Alex Walker had another meeting about CODIS. Who is this guy or men? Foreign DNA in the house, on the step, next to the bed, on the bike seat, bike helmet. They're pointing to all these other unknown foreign DNA as potential suspects to Suzanne's disappearance. I guess there was an email among some of the witnesses concerned about the 3 CODIS alerts on this case. But Morphy, again, when he made his ruling about during the preliminary hearing, he talked about how the CODIS matches is critical. That was critical for the defense's case. that allowed Barry Morphew to have bond. I'm trying to see if now Holbert is on. So remember, I had to leave in and out, so I think now Holbert is now kind of talking about his. Oh, no, sorry, excuse me. Iris Eaton is still talking because she talks about, I'm in Alice in Wonderland and they are at the gallows ready to hang Morphew. That was a statement from Iris Eaton. She says, all the investigators are buddy-buddy, and no one's stopping anyone. She says, I trust people when they say that they are producing all of the evidence. She said, Agent Cahill is falsifying evidence, and the prosecution does nothing. The CODIS hit was... The CODIS hit was taken into consideration during the preliminary hearing, but not to the extent that I believe the defense would have liked. They wanted to question, other investigators on the CODIS matches because they claim they didn't know about the 3 CODIS match letter that was dated May 19th. Cahill wasn't there at the August meetings. He is being asked scientific questions that he can't answer because he wasn't in the meetings. However, Holbert knew that Cahill can't answer the questions about the terminology, my own knowledge from an expert on CODIS. She's claiming that the prosecution is trying to water down the evidence about CODIS, is what she's trying to get at. She even went on to say, I'm not sure that we even know everything that they have still to this day. She, went on to say, we didn't know about the CODIS letter for such a long time. Even Megan Doogie, the agent that works in the lab, had a quality insurance review in August of 2021 about the CODIS matches. The lab reports... and that they don't have the entire quality insurance review. The defense claims they don't have the entire quality insurance review. And that's 106 pages. They did receive the QIR email, which is the quality insurance review email, last week. And it started off with Agent Rogers from the lab and Cahill talking about, when he got the letter or when he should have gotten the letter, wants to know when she got the matches. So they're talking about the timing of when they knew about the CODIS match. Megan made up the term. It's not an FBI term. It's not a glossary term. It's a way for agents to communicate that it was a moderate match, a limited genetic profile. And it excluded numerous profiles when they entered the glove box DNA. In the QIR email, it looks like Agent Doogie's being questioned when she received the match and how she conducted the analysis. Iris Eaton points to the the district attorneys, the prosecutors, and said, you have an obligation to provide the defense exculpatory information. The immense investigation, I want a record of those meetings like I was recorded. Talking about when Cahill recorded her without her knowledge. she mentions that Morphew doesn't want to go through another preliminary hearing. She said they lied. They said so. They are still sitting in this courtroom today and keeping, emails. They're conducting misconduct. Rule 16, this is just scratching the surface of what we know. Exhibit 18 is what they discovered from DA. We got half of that email, so redacted from that email was the part about the unknown. So I guess they're talking about this email between an email that they had gotten from the DA, and then they got emails finally from the CBI last week, and some of the original email that they had gotten had been redacted. And when they finally got the CBI emails last week, they got the full email. She said it was intentionally cut off. The person printing the email is different, but it's missing the part about the unknown. She claims maybe it was Detective Burgess or someone redacted it. This case is in peril. When these prosecutors are representing this, someone did that. She's talking about the redaction of an email. She said they know that this is exculpatory and they aren't producing it. She said, so as a result of getting Cahill's report 595, they held those reports after the judge's ruling on the preliminary hearing. She said, why aren't we being told about them before the preliminary hearing? To make sure we're on a, fair playing field. This is interesting. She brings up a meeting that the district attorney's office had with the defense counsel before one of the days of the preliminary hearing. She said they called us into a conference room, the prosecution, to tell us about a garbage woman that claims she knew Morphew 20 years ago, and they wanted to make a scene. It was like she said it was almost like they had found Suzanne and made it such a big deal. But in the meantime, she says they're holding all this exculpatory evidence. And then she said, well, what's her name? This woman that's claiming she knew Morphew 20 years ago. And DA said that, we'll send you her name in discovery, is what Eaton explained to the court. She said Iris Eaton also adds that they don't have a single note on why the witnesses wanted a protection order from Barry Morphew. She says she knows that the investigators and the prosecution met with the witnesses, but they don't take notes. She said the investigation had been going on for nearly 2 years, and we were just learning we don't have all of the emails. 20,000 emails with no organization is what she's saying. So what she wants the judge and the court to do is to have sanctions because of what she claims is discovery violations on the part of the prosecution and the DA's office. She says some options of what could be done. The defense wants it to be dismiss the murder 1 charge against Barry Morphew and drop it down to a murder 2. They want to exclude all of Morphew's statements to investigators for the trial. That's another option she's wanting to give to the judge in making his decision. And she even said, I can hear all of them talking about the prosecution sighing these last, and she goes, we've been sighing the last 8 months because we haven't gotten these emails and this information that is supposed to be given to us by law. So she said another option is to reduce Barry Morphew's bond because they don't want to have another prelim, reduced his bond from $500,000 to $55,000. She says it will help Morphew fight this fight. She said also, they want the court to return the attorney fees as well. She said the prelim was a failure. And this discovery should come at their expense, talking about the district attorney's office at their expense. They also asked, another option is that they want, that there's a 540 witness list. I'm even on the witness list. I don't know why. They want to have that dwindle down 30 days before the trial. They want them to do that. She went as far as saying, this unknown partial sample of a foreign DNA, Barry Morphew has been excluded from that. And so Morphew should not be in court. And this is when Macy, his youngest daughter, starts crying in the courtroom. Which then Barry Morphew turns around and then he starts visibly getting emotional. And that was at the very end of Iris Eaton's closing arguments, if you want to say. So she was done. She sat down. She actually sat down, noticed Morphew crying, so she switched places with another defense counsel. She started consoling him. Macy was very, very upset. Someone had given her tissues, and so she was crying. Now it's the prosecution's time to explain what the heck they did with the discovery, and kind of their closing arguments to the judge as far as pleading with him to not give sanctions and things like that. So it's Mark Holbert's turn. He says the defense argument is inflammatory and are simply not there. Why would we put our careers at stake? Pretty much is what he's explaining. He said there's a sideshow going on, brought on by the defense. I don't know what I was trying to say here. He says, we have turned over 50,000 pages, all of this exculpatory evidence. They got it from us, he says. We got a little flat-footed, he admitted. He said, of discovery that hadn't been cataloged. There has been one exception, the emails. So he admits of messing up the emails. This is a lead that needs to be tracked down, he says. These people weren't really in Suzanne's car, is what the prosecution is claiming. Macy is, again, I've noted that she was crying, and so is Barry at this point. He talks about there wasn't enough DNA material. We were clear with what we had, the letter and the report from Agent Cahill. That was what we had at the preliminary hearing. The Phoenix one on the 15th, we didn't have access of that in the preliminary hearing, he explains. And he even says, I doubt that Judge Morphy would have called the preliminary hearing a sham. And he goes on, Mark Holbert goes on and says, this is the only place, Suzanne's car, where there were 3 found CODIS matches. And she was able to get that in during the preliminary hearing. And Judge Morphy took that into account. That is why the defendant had a bond, is what Mark Holbert is explaining to this judge. They were able to use that effectively to get their client out of jail, is what Mark Holbert is saying. And then they went and did more investigation after the prelim. And that's not a discovery violation, is what the Mark Holbert is saying. He said the defense uses all this nefarious language, but that language I used is from that letter. The defense also knows all this from the comm logs. It is simply not true. The defense makes a huge deal that we didn't call Agent Cahill to testify during the preliminary hearing. The defense assumes that Agent Cahill was removed from the case because of his testimony. CBI didn't give him a reason of why he was let go off the case. And I remember Iris Eaton looks at another defense counsel and goes, are we even in the same case or same hearing? And Mark Holbert says, the defense continues to provide these nefarious motives. It's just CODIS 101 is what it is. It wasn't nefarious about it. It's like strategy to me. 3 CODIS. He says, I don't understand how setting up a meeting is exculpatory. If you have notes, you got them, produce them, is what he's explaining to the judge, is what he tells his investigators. Mark Holbert is explaining to this judge, Judge Ramsey, that Judge Morphy did take these 3 CODIS matches into consideration, and it weighed heavily on him, and that's why he made the decision to grant bond for Barry Morphew. That's what, Mark Holbert with the prosecution is explaining to this judge. He said pushing law enforcement for those emails, saying that we aren't going to produce those emails, is simply not true. He didn't realize that there was a deadline for those emails, he said. He read over the Judge Murphy's order and he didn't realize that there was a deadline. Yes, he admits that it would have been nice to have the emails earlier. They want all the emails. I haven't deleted any of the emails, and I haven't looked at them all, is what Mark Holbert is saying. He says they have what we have. They have what law enforcement has. This is Mark Holbert saying this. Mark Holbert says, I asked last week 8 updates on the emails from law enforcement, and I'll do that every single month because of the order. The whole idea about we're in cahoots and that there's this conspiracy, Mark Holbert says, is just simply not true. What he says is what more likely happened is that they only had one secretary in the Chaffee County DA's office. She's one person. And Mark Holbert talks about how she's a great secretary, but there's also all these criminal cases and that's going on in these courtrooms and things like that. And there's all these plea papers, and there's just a ton of paperwork, and she's just one person. And he admits that they have changed that they have gotten help from the 4th Judicial District. They're having some resources to help. He talked a little bit about the Pharaoh scans that the defense was upset that they didn't get, and how it takes 30 days to get the software. And there's thousands of photos of the defendant's home. And he admitted that they never used this before. And he also reminds the judge that the incident with Cahill and discharging his weapon was well after the preliminary hearing. And maybe that's the reason why he's off the case. And maybe that's the reason why he's no longer with CBI. He talks about, was there ongoing discussions with investigators about CODIS that wasn't disclosed before the preliminary hearing to the defense? Wouldn't that be fair game? In those hearings, it was an investigation. We learned the basic knowings about CODIS before the preliminary hearing and didn't think it needed to be discoverable. The HP laptop, prosecution thought they provided it. They had provided the photos of the laptop, but not the actual HP laptop and phones that the defense is asking for. He admits that there has been, he said there's been no discovery violations that would affect the preliminary hearing. We have been open, honest, and complying with Rule 16 as best we can, and we will continue to do so. We can't be perfect, and we haven't been perfect. These are extreme sanctions, upholding of outrageous conduct. There hasn't been outrageous conduct, is what Mark Colbert is explaining to the judge. Now that's kind of how it ended with the prosecution. And then the court, Judge Ramsey Lama says, the court isn't going to make a ruling on this motion. He said that he's going to make a written motion, and it should be filed with the cases of interest in the Barry Morphew case. So that was kind of the end of the day. So I'm going to ask for questions in 1 minute. So there's still some motions filed by the people as well as the defense that has not been discussed. And that is going to be heard on Thursday, February 10th at 9:30 a.m. in Fremont County. Remember that the change of venue was granted and it is going to be moved to Fremont County. And there's also a status conference hearing February 24th at 9 a.m. And I believe that the whole no tweeting thing is still going to be a thing then. So there has been a new case file opened in Fremont County, and it's case number 226R47, and that was kind of the end of the day. So let's answer some questions, shall we? Thank you so much for bearing with us for what? That was a long time. 16 pages of notes though, people. Sorry. Okay, someone is asking about the Pharaoh scan. What is a Pharaoh scan? And it's a popular choice among law enforcement agencies to accurately document a scene. I've seen it like at complicated car accidents, and if there's a crime scene at a home, things like that. It analyzes the event and creates a compelling courtroom presentation, like almost like a 3D image, I believe. Pharaohs provides lightweight, portable, and easy-to-use laser scanners to capture exterior and interior scenes, as well as a 2D and 3D software that can be used to analyze and reconstruct the scene for courtroom presentations. Does that make sense? I hope so. Please let me know if you have further questions about the Pharaoh scan. Someone's asking about when Holbert said it wasn't exculpatory evidence. Can can you comment on the judge's reaction? I mean, the whole time the judge is listening, he has his mask on, so it's really hard to tell his expressions, but he's taking notes throughout the whole time. And sometimes he actually stands up. He talks a little bit about, I don't know if it was his back issue or hip issue, but he has some type of medical issue, I guess, that he wants to stand sometimes during the proceedings. Someone's asking if I will be able to cover the case when it moves. Yes, it's actually an hour closer to Colorado Springs. So it's 1 hour that we're saving driving there and driving back. I also know that Judge Ramsey Lama lives in Fremont County, as well as the District Attorney Linda Stanley. So, and it's also an hour closer to the defense as well. They are from Denver, so they travel quite a bit to come to Chaffee County. So now they'll be going to Fremont County. Someone's asking if Barry traveled to Arizona with the girls. I do not know. I'm sorry. I don't know that question or the answer. Someone's asking, when did Barry Morphew and Shoshona start dating? Well, Shoshona and Barry have not publicly said that they are dating or have dated. Shoshona has said that they were friends. Others in the arrest affidavit said that they had evidence of Barry Morphew spending the night at her house multiple times. So, yeah, I have not seen Shoshona in the court, though, if people are asking if she's been in the courtroom. Was Barry the one friending Suzanne's Facebook friends, only those with the name Jeff? That's a great question, and they have not discussed that in the courtroom. I'm guessing this person is asking about when some of Suzanne's older brother's friends were getting friend requested. I think that's what this person's asking about. Like the day or two before Suzanne went missing. Do you think the girls will testify and be subpoenaed by prosecution? What's your thoughts? Will they be protected by taking the stand? They can plead the fifth and they don't have to testify if they don't want to. I believe so. So I'm not sure. I mean, they talked in court last week. And although they were emotional, they held their composure, and what they asked, it was granted by the court. So who knows? Only they know if they will talk in court. What is the next step in the court process? So what's next in the court process, they're going to still go over kind of what's going to be allowed during the trial and what's not going to be allowed. So the judge already made a ruling about a particular statement that Barry Morphew had made in regards to a different charge about him voting for Suzanne and the falsifying voting, the ballot, that charge. There was a statement he had made, and the judge has already ruled that that statement will not be in this trial. So things like that will still go on. Obviously, this huge thing about the discovery violations will be big, and if there's any sanctions that the judge will put on the prosecution is pretty big. Has it been said how Barry attempted to influence an officer? Briefly, I can't remember. It was in the prelim. I'd have to look back at my notes. Oh, it was something about him talking to Agent Harris? No, the FBI agent Grusing about providing, if he were to provide information or cooperate, would he not, I don't know, something about him being cleared if he were to do something. I believe that's what it was. The next court date is February 10th, which is this coming Thursday. So less than a week away. And it will be in Fremont County for the first time, which is in Canyon City, which is like an hour away from Colorado Springs. Hour 15, hour 20. Yeah, back to the question about like how did, has it been said, how Barry tried to influence an officer? It really, they haven't gone into specifics into that, like super hardcore. Let me see what other questions. I'll take like 5 more questions. Someone's asking if they will live stream the actual trial. That's a great question. We, as the media, would love to know, and as a journalist, we would love to know that, but it's kind of too early to know that. There's still a lot more things that have to be done and decided on before that. Before the media will even file a motion to be able to do that. So that is still unknown. Okay, I just want to kind of go over a couple of facts that I talked about before I sign off and answer 2 or 3 more questions. Former CBI agent Joseph Cahill was assigned to the Suzanne Morphew investigation May 13th. He'd only read and revised up to page 19 of the arrest affidavit. The DA received email regarding partially matched DNA May 19th of 2021, a few weeks after Barry was arrested. DNA was foreign male DNA. It was found on her bike brakes, bike handlebars, bike cushion, bike helmet, glove box, and rear seat of Suzanne's Range Rover. Also alleged by the defense is that there was an unknown male DNA found inside the home and on the step into the entry of the home. And it's important to note that only the DNA that was a partial match to a sex offender was only found on the glove box. The other unknown foreign DNA was not matching the one sample from the glove box. Hope that clarifies that. The defense alleges Cahill received an email regarding the foreign DNA not until August 19th, a week before he was called to testify on it in regards to the partial match to the sex offender. They actually later showed that Cahill followed up on that email the same day. Cahill testified on the stand during the preliminary hearing. Was Fremont County Eaton's suggestion? No, that was not a suggestion. She was just wanting a change of venue out of Chaffee County. She didn't, suggest Fremont County. And remember, Fremont County is still in the 11th Judicial District. It's still in the same jurisdiction as DA Linda Stanley, as well as Judge Ramsey Lama. Okay. Someone's asking what caused Macy to break into tears. I wouldn't know for certain, but when she did it, the timing was at the end of Iris Eaton's closing arguments about the discovery violations that the prosecution had done. And the white noise, people were asking The week prior, it wasn't really working. We could still hear kind of what the judge and the prosecution as well as the defense was discussing. But on February 1st, the white noise had been fixed. So someone's asking if I can inform viewers about if the Range Rover had left the property on May 10th. That's a great question. And we have not seen the telematics, and that has not been produced in court as of yet. So we do not know. Okay, one more question. I hope it's a good one. This is the longest live I think I've ever done, but it was a lot. And if you missed some of it, please go back. And if you have any other questions. And Troy Skinner, did you see that I talked about the 20,000 emails that were produced last week? Anything else, guys? Can Judy Johnson ask the question again? So because we can't tweet, that's why I have more extensive notes, I think, also. Oh, I missed Maureen's question. Someone said it was a good question. Oh, is Barry Morphew working part-time or full-time? I don't know. I was told he was working, has been seen around Chaffee County working, so I'm not sure if he's full-time or part-time, but I am aware from people in Chaffee County that he is working. Are the Mormons watching the court proceedings? Yes, I am told that Suzanne's family has access to WebEx, and they are watching, even though they're not in the courtroom. Someone's asking if Barry met Shoshona at a dumpster. It's a great question. I'm not sure. I believe she told me that when she was cleaning the Cushmans, I believe, rental property, that she met him while she was doing that. I don't know if it was specifically at the dumpster, but. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'm getting hungry. It's about dinner time here, so I'm gonna get off of this, and thank you so much for all of you guys watching and asking questions, and I will likely have another report on February 10th when Barry Morphew is in court again in Fremont County. Thank you guys again. Bye-bye.